Hi, welcome to our presentation on Applied Understanding of Leadership. Our topic is Preferential Treatment in Leadership with a case study in conflict resolution.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Ewart and I live in Abbotsford, British Columbia. I've been teaching for 6 years and I teach grade 2.
Hi, I'm Andrea Penner, and I live in Abbotsford, BC. I've been in the education world for approximately 20 or so years, and currently I'm in my first year of being vice principal.
Hi, I'm Ladine Park, and I'm a high school counselor in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I've been teaching since 2007, and I've been in this position as a counselor for the past about 8 years.
The topic we chose to discuss is the idea of preferential treatment in leadership. We chose this topic because it is something that each of us has encountered in our teaching careers and know that it is something that can be felt in many workplaces. We all bring a different perspective to this topic, from an observer to a leader, from elementary to high school, and as well 3 different roles played in a school: teacher, high school counselor, and vice principal. In the following case studies, you will see how one school has worked through the resolution process, whereas the other school has not yet addressed the underlying conflict issues that are permeating within the school environment.
The challenge is not to eliminate conflict, but to transform it. It is to change the way we deal with our differences, from destructive, adversarial battling to hard-headed side-by-side problem solving.
Andrea and I work in the same elementary school in Abbotsford, BC. This is a case study from a recent experience that we both experienced in our school. Over the last several years, our staff had been feeling like the administration had been showing favoritism to several staff members, and resentment was beginning to build. Some felt that certain people were being chosen for roles in chapel, for Prody events that involved travel, missions trips, and our leadership team, to name a few. Comments were being made behind people's backs, resentment was growing, and relationships were being eroded, along with the mistrust of administration. From a teacher perspective, I was feeling the resentment from my colleagues. I was one of the chosen few who had been given some opportunities. I'm a yes person and I want to contribute to my school community, and my life stage allows me to do this. From the outside, it looked like I was being given unfair advantage for specific opportunities, but in reality, I was putting in the effort, time, and work to be rightly afforded these roles and experience, which most were available to everyone. As much as I respect and value my principal and his leadership, I struggled at times with the lack of communication that he was giving to my colleagues, which in turn directly impacted how my colleagues were perceiving me.
From an administration perspective, the situation was beginning to be hard to navigate for us as an administrative team. In addition, people were being cruel to one another. I was brand new to the job of vice principal, but previously I had been on staff for the better part of 20 years, and I knew about and had felt some of the same feelings in the past, and so I understood what my colleagues were feeling. Being in administration put me in an interesting position. From my perspective, I knew we needed to tackle this, and although I was new to the job, I knew that it was important that we have space to discuss this issue openly and work through possible solutions. I felt we needed to come to a resolution to not only have staff feel safe and valued in their role at the school, but we as administration needed to have a positive start together as a new team and show our staff that they could trust their leadership. Going forward, without the principal present to ensure that staff felt comfortable and completely open to share their thoughts and ideas, I led our staff through 3 meetings that targeted the issue, an action plan, and a final resolution document that would guide our future interactions on this topic.
When looking at conflict resolution, we walked through 3 phases that promoted a positive change, teamwork, and a plan moving forward. In our first meeting, we identified the problem, reflected on professional standards and who we are called as professionals, created a proposed action plan as a team with open table discussion, and had an opportunity to share concerns and ask questions. In our second meeting, we reviewed the action plan, we developed a We Believe document as a team to guide our interactions with one another, established lines of communication in times of conflict, allowed an opportunity for people to share individually with either myself or a leadership team colleague, to share in a more private setting. And finally, I collected notes from the prior 2 meetings to share with the principal. In the end, we had one more meeting where we shared the compiled We Believe document that had been created by the whole staff and had time for feedback.
In this scenario, our principal moved from a transactional to a transformational leadership role. According to Harris, transactional leadership would be primarily concerned with promoting structural rather than cultural change. As seen in our principal, his focus was not on the people, but on the organization and the decisions he needed to make to promote our school's success. Harris also states that transactional leadership is concerned largely with structures, emphasizing organizational purposes rather than people. He made decisions based on convenience and familiarity rather than allowing for equal opportunity and acknowledging his staff's emotions and strengths. Over time, he soon realized how his decisions were negatively impacting staff morale, emotions, and their ability to trust their administration. Leithwood and Beattie state that the motivation for teachers to act in a particular way is influenced by their emotions and feelings. Due to the fact that our teachers were not feeling valued, conflict began to arise within the staff. The feelings of not being chosen, unequal treatment, and miscommunication permeated our school community. Coming into this situation in my new role as a vice principal, I knew I had to help my fellow administration colleague move into a more transformational approach. The benefit to having a new administrative team meant that we could acknowledge and guide this situation from a new perspective. Harris states that transformational leaders not only manage structure, but they purposely impact upon the culture in order to change it. In addition, Harris says that it is concerned with relationships and engagement of individuals. Transformational leadership focuses on setting directions, developing people, organizing the culture, and building relationships within the school community. Knowing this, looking at our plan for resolution, one can see that the transformational approach was effective and integral in building a positive climate in our school community and the start of the resolution process.
Conflict resolution. As Fisher, Patton, and Urey state, conflict is inevitable and useful part of life. It often leads to change and generates insight. Although difficult in many ways, this conflict story allowed us as an administrative team to see the gaps in our leadership. Knowing these gaps, we were now able to start the journey of change, improving relationships and trust building. The challenging piece of this situation is that you have a large variety of people on your staff that come with various thoughts, emotions, and feelings towards us as their leaders and to the conflict itself. As Fisher states, the ability to see the situation as the other side sees it, as difficult as it may be, is one of the most important skills a negotiator can possess. If you want to influence them, you also need to understand empathetically the power of their point of view and to feel the emotional force with which they believe in it.
Throughout this scenario, we can see that our principal's ability to critically reflect on ideas, emotions, and decisions were not always visible. Brookfield, as cited in Denston and Gray, agrees by saying where reflection is absent, there is the constant risk of making poor decisions and bad judgments. If our principal would have reflected through his decisions earlier in the process, perhaps different outcomes would have been had. We can see that reflection provides a meaningful way for leaders to gain genuine understanding. Critical reflection is mindful of three attributes as stated by Yost et al: open-mindedness, responsibility, and wholeheartedness. As seen in our resolution plan, administration showed open-mindedness in listening to all sides, responsibility in that they took responsibility for their decisions in the past and looked for truth from all sides, and wholeheartedness in overcoming fears and wanting to make meaningful change to our school culture. Going forward, reflective learning can assess leaders to acquire the knowledge and skills to make better judgments in ambiguous situations. Critical reflection is at the core of leadership development. Our leadership has shown that they have consciously shifted their practice to reflect on decisions to better equip future decision-making and thus has allowed trust to be rebuilt. What was your role in this situation?
I was the principal at the time.
And what was your biggest challenge in this situation?
I think two things. The biggest challenge was one, kind of reflecting and deciding on what I needed to own as part of the situation, and the second part I would be just the inability to communicate or defend some of the pieces that were part of the situation. So wanting to be able to explain and not being able to fully do that.
How did this impact you in your ability to do or perform your job?
The whole period of time, was challenging. I think just because it takes up so much of your mental space, and it's a bit emotional because it feels personal. So it does just kind of, it's always in the background. It's there, and so it just kind of I think it clouds things. It makes everything a little more challenging.
Has there been a resolution, and why or why not?
I think for the most part, there's been some resolution. I think partly it was due to some openness and just being able to talk about it and bring it out into the open if some people were feeling that, if that was a perception that was out there, just allowing people to voice that and share it, be able to share a little bit from my perspective. So I think for most people there was resolution. I think for one or two there, it might not feel that way. One of the things that we did to adjust was we altered the format of our leadership team model. We went to a bit more broad-based. So we have more people on our leadership team, more representative, and that's going to be changing from year to year, so it won't necessarily be the same and small group of people. And this leads to lots of reflection in the day-to-day as well going forward, right? As far as how you make decisions and how you communicate those decisions, and just an awareness of what people see and feel.
Similarly to the elementary situation, in high school, I have seen administration favor certain teachers. In the school and situation I am in right now, this favoritism is very disadvantageous for teachers. Certain teachers are being favored by having more students that are higher needs put in their classroom because they are stronger teachers and more capable of supporting those students. Leaders in the school recognize our competent teachers and overwhelm them with the most challenging of students. Often it is our stronger teachers that get the hardest students, and weaker teachers are not given the challenging students in their classes, and therefore not given the opportunity to rise to the challenge of supporting these students. This leads to a much heavier load for some teachers with a diverse set of needs in the classroom, with students from English as an additional language, modified students, and students that have learning assistance needs. We end up burning out our best teachers because there are teachers that don't adapt their lessons to the needs of the students, and they then don't have to teach those students because they're no longer put in their classes. So the questions that arise are, why is the teacher not mentored and expected to step up to meet the needs of the student? And why is the school leadership not stepping in to support our teachers that need it? There are some difficulties in the resolution of this. So this problem in the school that I'm in has not been resolved. And there are some challenges that arise in solving this conflict. So there has been a delegation of responsibilities for the scheduling of these students that have higher needs, and they are done by the department in the department that they're supported by. So the responsibility of scheduling for students that need more support is done by the individual departments. So EAL is English as an additional language. The Learning Assistance, or LATs department, are students that are either modified or have learning needs that they need maybe more scaffolding or more support in their classes. So these leaders in these departments adjust timetables so that the support tutorials can fit into their schedule, but often they're also hand choosing the teachers they know will do a good job supporting the students. And this comes down to the same handful of teachers every time. It's not clear that administration realizes that certain teachers are being loaded up as much as they are, or if they do know it's maybe being overlooked because there's pressure to support these students. We want to make sure that these students are being successful. And ultimately, it would be the students that suffer. If they're in a classroom where their needs are not being met, then they're the ones that suffer. So it's the students that suffer in their learning when we're expecting teachers to rise up to the challenge of meeting those needs, and then they don't. In the structure of our school, we do have quite a bit of distributed leadership because we are quite a big school. So There is the principal and then the vice principals. We have 2 of them. And then there are department heads of each department in our building. So that there is a type of distributed leadership that exists. But in this particular scenario, I feel like it is more delegation that is happening rather than a distributed leadership. Admin is delegating these scheduling duties, and rather than following through and ensuring the success of this task, it's left up to each department to figure it out. There's poor communication at the moment. This situation requires more than delegation. Spillane writes, a distributed perspective presses us to consider organizational structures as more than vessels for leadership activity and more than accessories that leaders can use to execute a particular task using some predetermined strategy for practice. Interdependency emerges when the enactment of a leadership task depends on the interplay between 2 or more actors or aspects of the situation. So it's that interdependency and that interplay that's really missing from this situation. I propose that more communication between all parties is needed in this situation, and clear expectations and limitations need to be set and followed through on. In the resolution of this conflict, I found an article on the unethical side of leadership, and they came up with some suggestions for improvement in their study to help resolve this type of conflict from the perspective of our leadership and admin team. So key principal behaviors that influence the emotions of the teachers working in their schools are things like professional respect shown for teacher capability, providing appropriate acknowledgement for teacher commitment, competence, and sacrifice, and protecting teachers from damaging experience like the one that we're looking at today. Because conflict resolution needs to be committed to from both sides, our teachers also need to recognize their role in this issue. So in Mindich and Liberman's article about building professional learning communities, Keegan Leahy called switching from the language of complaint to the language of commitment. So I think there needs to be both sides committing to this resolution. As professionals, we are required to step up and provide support to our students. And in the Mind Tools article about conflict resolution, it's suggested to understand the other person's side of the situation, acknowledge the role each person plays in the problem, and if it doesn't get resolved, to keep on trying. I believe that this is a conflict that could be solved by getting everyone on the same page with clear communication, and that each involved person is able to recognize their own role in the situation. And a big part of that is reflection. So reflecting on practice. Reflection on this issue by each individual involved will be important in recognizing how to get us to a solution. If everyone thinks that they're doing the right thing, it's not going to get resolved. So reflexive practice has been a common suggestion for educational leadership to examine their own leadership practices, to examine ethical or unethical leadership practices. Ethical mindfulness can be one way for educational leaders to conduct reflexive practices, according to Sam. I know these concerns have been brought forward, so I know admin is aware, but I'm not sure that they are fully aware of the damage it's causing. Our vice principal in charge of scheduling is new to our school and has had a bit of a difficult time balancing all the things that he's responsible for this year. So it is quite overwhelming in the scheduling department. And our principal is a wonderful leader, but he's hands-off because so he trusts that everyone in their role is doing their role really well. So without reflection, there may be a missed opportunity to understand the frustration of the teachers. This next slide is a video of a testimonial of a staff member that feels that she is one of the ones that are being overloaded with students with high needs.
Okay, so what is your role?
I am a history teacher and as well transition teacher at Holy Cross High School and social sciences department head.
Okay. And what has been the biggest challenge for you in this situation?
Over the years, I have definitely noticed that myself and another colleague in my department have consistently been loaded heavier with EAL, LAT students. We have even printed off class lists and compared them with other staff members and taken them to admin to prove that we're not just complaining, we're not just feeling overused, that we actually provided concrete evidence that we do get far more than other members of our department. So we have been trying in the last couple of years to definitely make our voices heard about the issue.
And how does this impact you and your ability to perform your job?
I think that teaching EAL, LAT, modified students is actually our responsibility, but when you have a class that has all three at once, plus I've actually even have alt ed in there at the same time, so 4 different modifications, 4 different needs, it makes it incredibly difficult to make sure that you are meeting the needs of the regular students as well as the needs of those students who have other learning designations and needs in the class. It is too difficult to juggle everything. It makes it very hard to have meetings to talk with EAL teachers, LAT teachers about how to modify, what they need. So the additional prep time is exponential, and it gets very, very exhausting because it's not just one class. It could be in 4 classes that I see that. So it is very tiring. I have done my best over the years to sit down and learn from an LAT teacher how to modify. And yeah, you try to do your best, but it is exhausting when it's consistently done to you.
And do you feel there has been a resolution, or could there be a resolution for this?
Well, I guess the resolution is I'm leaving the school, so they have to find somebody else to do this too, unfortunately. I don't feel confident there is a resolution because the teachers that the LAT EAL departments avoid putting the teachers in, they haven't stepped up despite trying to mentor, doing sessions for PD about this is our teacher responsibility, this is what we all need to do. I had one of the staff members who refuses to modify and work with these students basically tell me, quit making the rest of us look bad. It's our job is to meet the needs of all students, and when you have staff members that feel that it isn't their job, they're doing a disservice to their profession.
There are 3 things that we have learned about leadership and will make a difference in our work. Lesson 1, leadership style. Certain types of leadership, such as transformational and distributed, lend itself to collaborative, positive, and meaningful work environments. Although this may take more time and effort to lead effectively, knowing your people and understanding how your actions and decisions affect them will make you a successful leader. Looking at decisions that we make and how they will affect the people that we work with is something that will be at the forefront of our decision making. Lesson number 2 is conflict resolution. Allowing people to be part of the process of resolution and letting their voice be heard can richly benefit the resolution process as people feel part of the solution. Addressing issues in your school, while it may be uncomfortable and challenging, it is an integral part of leadership. During times of conflict, being intentional and recognizing the role that you play is an important piece of the resolution process.
Lesson 3 was reflective practice. Critical reflection allows for examination of practices. In all jobs, it is important to carve out time for self-reflection, to understand where you can improve. But in leadership, it is more than doing it for yourself. It's about setting an example for your staff, leading by doing. And it's also important to make sure that there is honest, introspective thought to keep yourself accountable to the people you are leading. It is part of learning from experience, and it is foundational for challenging prejudice, as Thompson and Pascal point out in their article, Developing Critically Reflexive Practice. The strengths that we found in working as a group together were lots. I think we all did a great job on this presentation. We started off by making a plan and dividing up the tasks and amount of work each one of us was going to be responsible for, because we could not be working on it together all the time. We set goals of what we needed completed for the next time we met. Each of us followed through on what we agreed to, and this helped us keep on time and kept us productive in creating a great product. We got to know each other a bit and interjected conversation and friendliness into our meetings, and this helped us listen to each other and build a bit of connection that helps us foster and nurture a working relationship. And we all tried to be flexible and understanding that each of us has a lot on our plate and we need to figure out how to balance it all.
There were 3 challenges that we found working as a team. We were working in different time zones, as Andrea and I live in BC and Ladine lives in Saskatchewan. Finding times that worked to Zoom needed communication and consideration of everyone's schedules. Andrea and I work in the same school, which meant that we were able to work together while Ladine had to work independently. As educators working in a school setting, June is a very busy time. Along with families, report cards, and the end-of-year activities, it was challenging to find times that we could work as a team. In order to navigate these challenges, we used our strengths of flexibility, communication, and collaboration to make our time with each other fun, purposed, and productive.
Reflecting on this project as a team, we used our strengths, established a positive climate, and picked up on nuances. According to Hill, he states that all members of the team can engage in monitoring and collectively provide distributed or shared leadership to help the team adapt to changing conditions. We did not have one leader in our group, but rather shared the leadership role and responsibilities one another. With regards to a positive climate, if the team is well maintained and has good relationships, then the members will be able to work together effectively and get their job done. Similarly, if the team is productive and successful in accomplishing its task, it will be easier to maintain a positive climate and good relations. Though Chelsea and I didn't know Ladine before, we quickly felt that we had a connection, mutual respect, and shared values and expectations in our work ethic. This project was unique in that we had to complete it virtually from different parts of Canada. Hill shares that virtual team leaders must be able to read all the personal and contextual nuances in a world of electronic communications. With our communication being totally online, we needed to be intentional in our attention and understanding in each other's body language and words. Thank you for viewing our presentation.